You're listening to Artistic Finance, show 199. On today's show, we chat with projection designer Wendall Harrington. We discuss the importance of building credit, SEP IRAs, the type of IRA available to freelancers, asking producers to contribute a percentage of your fee into a SEP IRA if you aren't part of a union that does that for you, and artistically building a third show that's a combination of the director's vision and your vision. We recorded this a week ago, and so if you hear us discussing the Trump administration doing crazy bad things, that was before they went and bombed Iran. So, as I seem to say every episode, if you hear this in the future, I hope that we have survived what is now a war with Iran, and let us also hope that the United States stops killing people and starts making peace in the world and within itself. Let us hope. All right, now today's show is more than 90 minutes, and that is because the conversation was so genuine, I just want you to experience it as is. So the only edits I've made were little audio things, and otherwise, this is just what we did. Find links to everything we discuss in the show notes or at artisticfinance.com/199. Without further ado, let's get to the show.
You are listening to Artistic Finance, where we help creatives learn about the business of show business.
Welcome and thank you for listening. I am your host, Ethan Steimel, broadcasting out of Lake St. Louis, Missouri. We are recording this on February 23rd, 2026. The news today is that the president, Trump, for those listening in the future, is waging a tariff war, and the Supreme Court on Friday said that he couldn't wage these tariffs, which is like sort of stunned the nation in the sense that the Supreme Court has finally sort of gone up against this president for the first time. But anyway, so now he's raging, and he's still raging on his immigration, the newest thing is that he's trying to take naturalized citizens and denaturalize them, which is, as far as I know, the first time anybody has tried to do something like this ever. So anyway, it's still wild time. So if you're listening in a few years from now, hopefully things have leveled out to a calm. But anyway, that all aside, today we welcome to the show projection designer Wendall Harrington. Welcome, Wendall.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Where are you broadcasting out of?
I am in the Hudson Valley of New York, where we are experiencing the second major snowfall of this winter. So it's very pretty, kind of dangerous. So I'm trapped, which is good because I got a lot of work to do.
Amazing. All right. So Wendall, our listeners know a little bit about you because we had Zach Borve on the show, and it was 90 minutes, but he said your name probably 200 times. I don't know that I'm exaggerating. But could you, and I'll say sort of briefly, but who knows what that word means. Could you just tell us about yourself and sort of the trajectory of your career from, whenever you got started to now?
All right. I will give you the very quick and very odd rundown. Just because people think of me so much as belonging to theater, where I have worked for close to 40 years. I started out as a filmmaker, and in the, crazy experimental films, late 60s, factory adjacent, doing that kind of work. And in the 70s, there was a recession. And I went to Los Angeles trying to get work in film in any capacity. And there was no work for women, certainly, and non-union women. So I came back to New York, and literally on a bet, I took a job in an ad agency because somebody says, you could get this job. And I got the job. And at the ad agency, because I had this film background, and when I say film background, I mean, PA work, sound work, editing, I had skills. I was on my way to trying to be something that I never ended up being. And so I did slideshows. I had to learn how to do slideshows. I didn't know anything about slideshows. And when you learn anything, and I think it's different now, but in those days, and we're talking mid-70s, the way I did it was you hung around and you watched. And I did a lot of hanging around and watching, both in film, which is how I learned film techniques, and also people who made slideshows in those days, what was euphemistically called industrial theater for clients like Milliken and Lazy Boy Chair Company, your dancing recliners. I mean, your basic art. Anyway, I learned how to do that, and I produced a lot of stupid shows for Fabric producers and things like that. But because I hung out at Staging Techniques, which is where I would rent equipment and programming, not so many people did this. And I got friendly with the guys because I needed to learn, and I was a good learner, and I remembered to bring donuts. And one day I got a call from Bill Batchelder, one of the partners there, and saying, Tharon Musser needs some slides made. Now, for those of you who were born in this century, Tharon Musser was a lighting designer who, when God said, let there be light, Tharon said, I think that's an R47. And so it has been. And Tharon lit Chorus Line and about a gazillion other things. She was a great woman of the theater who taught me so much, including a lot of my very bad behavior, because she actually knew everything, was also just an extraordinary designer and colleague. So I went to her, and I had been developing this work with these people who made slides, which was called what we now call bottom lit art, which is instead of, if you took a picture to make a slide, used to be you'd put your picture in front of the lens, you take a picture of it, and then you would project that. That is what we call top lit. The light hits it. Anyway, I was doing bottom lit, which is pure color. You're making negatives lit by gel. Absolutely pure. So that was what Tharon needed. That's what I delivered. Tharon said, thank you very much. That was great. A few weeks later, I get a phone call from Douglas W. Schmidt saying, Tharon Musser said I should talk to you. And he was designing They're Playing Our Song, which was to be a huge projection show. And I signed on, and I quit my job in advertising, and I ran away to join the circus. They're Playing Our Song, 1978, 1979, used a lot of, 16 xenographic slide projectors. We're talking the dawn of time, in the balcony rail. And that was the first theater I ever saw. So I feel like, I teach at the Yale School of Drama. Every single kid who comes into my class has both more education and more interest in theater than I ever had. And my experience of theater was Ed Sullivan and Busby Berkeley movies. That was it. That was all I knew about the theater. It wasn't that I was disinterested. Even though I could see the Empire State Building from my childhood window, we did not go there. That was not, and I would listen to opera 24/7. Never went there. But the experience was thrilling. So, and since this is a financial broadcast, I will say this, which I tell my students all the time. 1979, I did my first Broadway musical. I made a living working in the theater, 1994. So you do a lot of things in between there. So that's the basic story of how it started. And there was nobody doing it. Nobody was doing projection for theater. It was also the beginning of the computer age. So a lot of things became much more complicated. And so a quote unquote specialist was involved, and I became that specialist. And that's what I did. And there was literally nobody else. And I had to say yes to everything because I had to, well, first of all, I need money. And the other was there wasn't anybody else. And once you built a family in the theater, you never let your family down. And so, I exhausted myself for a number of years doing everything that everybody asked for. So that's in brief, the story.
So much there. So in 1994, you first made a living. How long have you been teaching, and when did you start teaching?
In a way, I've always been teaching because there was nobody to assist. So I had to teach every single person who came through my studio. It took me a good 6 to 8 months before anybody was actually useful. There were these things called the Broadway lighting master classes, which I think started in the 80s sometime. I remember going, and I would go and do sort of seminars, talk for 2 hours, answer questions, tell everybody everything I knew, because I was hoping that somebody else could do the work so I could sit down for a minute. And I started, I was, running around. I would go anywhere, like little Johnny projection seed. If you called me from a university and asked me to talk about it, I would go with my little tray of slides and try to talk about what it took to do it. I guess I started formally teaching at Yale 20 years ago. But before that, I did stints at various places where I would, like I said, show up for a weekend, a month, places like Brown, DePaul. And also, whenever I was somewhere out of town doing a show, I would call the local university and say, I'm here. I will happily come over and talk to students if you want me to. So I did a lot of off book teaching.
Yeah. All right, Ethan Steinwell here, teacher at Webster University. If any lighting designers or projection designers come through town, give me a call and say I'm here. I'll stop by the class.
I think that it's really vital that, when I went to teach at Yale, I didn't finish college. So when they asked me to teach at Yale, I said, I don't even have a college degree, no less. You're asking me to teach graduate school. And Ming at the time said, this is a professional school. What we want is professionals teaching. And I think that's such a difference when you go to a place like the Yale School of Drama, that the people who are teaching you are actually in the trenches and they haven't read it in a book, what it's like. So I've been there.
Well, and also you mentioned you did a lot of hanging out and watching. And I do think that's an underrated thing. Because in a way, that's what, to me, a successful internship would be, is a lot of hanging out and watching and getting involved and just learning. And you said, I remember to bring donuts. Okay, you can still do that in 2026, right? You might feel weird about it, but it's I guarantee I have a student that brings cookies to tech, right? And I remember this, right? And it's do I eat the cookies? No, I try not to because I'm trying to be healthy. But I remember it, it's memorable. So I think the hanging out and watching thing is so underrated, but still applicable.
I've been trying to write a book for the last while, and I sent some chapters to my editor, and one was very much about the early days and about not the succession of hanging out, because I learned film hanging out, and he said this is crucial. Nobody talks about this. And I try as much as I can. It's not always easy, but I try as much as I can to bring right now I'm going to be at ABT for a couple of weeks in tech, and I want my students to be able to hang out. It's very tedious, tech. And when people apply to Yale, one of the things that I ask the students, are you ready to be really bored? Because it's really boring. You can sit in tech for hours with nothing to do, and then suddenly someone will set your hair on fire. So it's you have to be able to. I remember a lighting designer I knew very well who finally quit. He says, it's too boring sitting around. And it's lighting designers are the busiest guys. So, but it's a lot of sitting around, and until they literally set your hair on fire and you have to do everything in 30 seconds, and they're going to open the house. So it's a specific kind of personality, I think, that can do that, especially because projection design is both scenic and lighting. We do all the front end work that a scenic designer does. I don't build a model, but I will guarantee I've done 6 times more research. And I've pulled in imagery and ideas from a million places. And then you're still in tech doing moment to moment while the set designer is knitting because he's done. So, I'm
on a project now where I'm not a projection designer per se, but I am doing a projection design. And the producer keeps saying, well, we don't have a set designer, or we don't have a set designer because of XYZ. And I keep thinking, well, what am I doing? I am your set designer. That's what I'm doing. I'm making your set for you by rearranging these screens and things.
Here's what you do. You call yourself production design. And production design is something that I have fought for a very long time. And I have now in dance, I am production designer on many occasions because dance doesn't always have so much scenery. But I think that, and production design is, I think, a missing category. And I've been over this conversation with a number of directors over time, including the brilliant Frank Colladi, who was brilliant with the text, great with the actors, could not run a tech. So, there is that. The thing that I miss so much now when I go to the theater is what I call single vision. In the older days, before everybody was sitting behind a screen, there was, I would watch Tony Walton. He would sit behind Tharon and, he wasn't telling her what to do, but he did have input into that experience. Now, if you try to sit behind a lighting designer, he will kill you. I mean, literally, they will cut you. So, and it just doesn't, and you see that in the production that I see, it's like, who's on first? I just saw Cavalier and Clay, which was, I would say, thankfully, it's one company, 59, who did sets, lights, projection. And it did feel like that. But that is so incredibly rare because a lot of people, I'm sorry to say, are saying, look what I can do. And then that's not exactly the best for storytelling.
Yeah. And for me, I love, because I just talked to a class of stage managers and they said, what do you look for like in collaborators? And I said with directors, well, with everybody, it's like, I want people bringing ideas to the table. Like, yes, I'll bring my own ideas, but like we all need things to react to. And so, and also like with a set designer, as a lighting designer, I'm more than happy for them to come over. I think a lot of times where I might kill them is when they do it on the final dress and they give me suggestions at the final dress. It's like, where were you all of tech? Day one of tech, you could have been there. You could have told me you wanted that tinted blue or something like that.
They were knitting.
They were knitting. Okay, so you mentioned 1979, you did your first Broadway musical, and then 1994, you started making a living. What did you do between? Like, what do you mean? Were you assisting or what were you doing?
No, assisting who? There was nobody to assist. I was it. There was nobody else making projection. No, I was doing, little shows for no money or, not quite enough money. I should also say that I had 2 kids and I was a single mom for a long time. And so I did industrial shows. I did like product stuff and for anybody who would pay money. I had a studio I was keeping open and I used to do this kind of promotional work for Esquire magazine for a number of years, and then they asked me to design the magazine, which was completely absurd, but it paid more money than I'd ever heard of in my life. And so that was one of the things that kept me going, was doing things like that. I worked at Esquire, I don't know, a bit more than 2 years as the design director. It was like a real salary with health insurance and the guarantee that I would be out the door every day at 6:00 because I had kids, or at that point, just one. So, I did whatever work I could do. And also, the secret of life in those days, and which is not possible now, is that I always tell people, you got to live like you live on unemployment. It's like my desires are small. I live in a very small, I raised 2 kids in 450 square feet. That is absurd. But they're tall, so I didn't stunt their growth. And, it was just that I was not going to go someplace where the rent might be an issue. So I think that there's so much more pressure to have things, glamorous things and expensive things. And it's not like I'm not interested in those things. I'm certainly interested in those things. But I also knew that I wanted to have a life and I wanted to not be in debt. And I successfully managed to never be in debt because I just wasn't going to do what I couldn't do. So that was how I was able to manage, because my studio for a long time was a drawing table next to my Murphy bed.
Yep.
But people can't live like that now. When in the 60s, I made $65 a week unemployment. My rent was $65 a month. You can't do that anymore. So if I work 2 days as a PA for $50 each day, that's $100. My rent's taken care of and my living is taken care of. That is no longer possible. And when I hear people talk about the kids in their avocado toast, I just want to scream because it's just a lie. It's not the avocado toast. It's that everything got more expensive. And the housing stock in New York and elsewhere, it's just out of control. Out of control.
I have to say, mad respect for raising kids, because I have a partner and we have one kid and I'm just barely holding it together. You know? So when you say you were a single parent, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Can't even imagine.
So, then you had to pay the nanny. I was back at work in 4 days after both kids. 4 days. And my kids got passed around and slept in a road box. And I've got a great story about Artistically taking my kid because the nanny's father had a heart attack. So I go down to Washington to do a national tour, and I got no assistance. It's just me, and I got a baby. And Artie says, here, give me that. And so he took the baby. I'm like working all day, go down to pick up the baby. She's sitting in the middle of the card table, right? Stagehands down, card table there. She's there. She's the auntie, and they're all having a great time. I get home to the hotel. That baby reeks of cigar smoke. But she's 41 now, and she says, I still like that smell. But
that's amazing.
And kids in tech, until they're unmanageable, are manageable. And everybody wants to help. And everybody sort of knew my situation. And, nothing melts a tense room. I remember Into the Woods. I did the original Into the Woods in San Diego. That first day, trying to get the cow to eat the thing, just got a paper mache cow on stage and, whatever they're trying to discover about how are they going to make this look like something. There's like so tense. And I'm just sitting in there. And I guess my mom was taking care of the kid out there, walks in with Anna, who must have been 4 or something at the time, and said, it's a cow. And it's like the whole room just melted, and it was like all the tension went away. And it was like, right. Okay. Right. This is what we're doing, and it was just like, it's just necessary sometimes to have that outlook to get through the next couple hours of whatever nonsense it is you're trying to do.
That's awesome. All right, Wendall, but before that, your creative personality, I feel like we've learned a lot about you, but what is a live event that you like to experience for yourself as an audience member?
Live jazz. I mean, if I, which is so odd because that's improvisational. And because I actually love improvisation and I love the freedom that gives, but it's not my world. I don't get to improvise. I'm making. So I think that there's a kind of freedom in that and of great jazz playing. But I love opera. I love ballet. I love theater less now, oddly. I don't see the way it's going is so incredibly healthy. And I find it a little it's too expensive. And so I can't enjoy it. It just, I even if I'm not paying for the tickets, I look around at the people paying for the tickets and I say, this is not worth it. So, so I have a little bit of an odd feeling about that. But, gun to my head, where do you want to be? I want to be in, I want to be in a room with great jazz players, constantly cycling in and out and blowing my mind.
Amazing. I don't believe in heaven, but I like to imagine heaven.
Yeah.
And you just sort of like described like a version of heaven that I could see. It's just like a jazz club and the music.
Oh man, that is a version of heaven. Absolutely. And they just keep cycling in and out, and like all of them before their drug problems, took over. But yeah.
Sure. All right. So now money. Are you good, bad, or neutral with money?
I would say, it depends on the day, but I would say that I am good about money because my mother was not, or she was like always like hysterical about how, childhood depression, as many of my generation's parents are. So there was always this kind of panic about there not being enough money. And I had, one parent who was like holding on to the dollar with a gripped hand, and my father who's had open hands where the money just poured through it. So it was kind of interesting upbringing like that. But I did learn a good deal about safety. And because I have been, let's say, not had the best experience with the sort of 1950s idea of a woman who is supported by a husband who takes care and does all that, I have been the breadwinner my entire life. I started working at 16. I have not stopped. And I have never been able to rely on anybody to support me. So that makes you, even when you think you're relying on somebody to support you, and then you find out that that's not exactly what's going on, that scenario. So it's made me very, cautious, thoughtful. I mean, I don't live under a rock, and I'm, I think I do have I know I have a very good life. But I definitely, I would say, am cautious. Like, I'm not a spendthrift. I don't buy the avocado toast. I make it at home.
So you said you started working at 16. So at the start of your career, maybe it was 16, what did your finances look like right then?
Oh, you're working for babysitting money, and I was like the arts and crafts counselor at summer camps and doing things like that. So, and I wouldn't say that I was a great saver, but I had money and I spent money, and I didn't, and when I got my that first kind of serious job working in advertising, I mean, I had worked in film companies and done odd jobs and stuff like that. But when I worked at the ad agency, I guess I got that job in 1972, 73, something like that. And my dad told me to go take a loan that I would pay back. He says, borrow the money and pay it back. He says, you're going to pay back a little bit more, but you're going to establish credit. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you, women could not get a credit card without the husband signing for it, or a father. And that was not going to be my instance because, like I said, I never had a husband I didn't support in some way or another. It's just that's my path, or my so I did that. And that was a great lesson to me, was about being, okay, you borrow this. I mean, it was $1,000, not a big deal. But I took the $1,000, put it in the bank. Yes, I paid more than they gave me in interest, but I paid it off every month. And then I established I still have good credit. So being told that, like 20 odd, that was a crucial thing, that you needed to have good credit and a response and that somebody saw that you could pay something back or would, that was important. That was that was a really important thing for me to learn. And so my whole life, I, worked on that, saying, no credit card debt. If you have debt, you pay it off. Everything is on time. Like I had to have my, propane, just thousands of dollars here, to, refilled. And I didn't get the bill from them because of the snowstorm that got lost. So I called them like I'm in a panic. I didn't get the bill and I'm worried about being a deadbeat. And they said, you've been paying us on time for 35 years. You're not a deadbeat. So, but there's it's just kind of functioning. I don't fuck up. So, sorry. But that's, I think those things are really important.
Got it. All right. So now today, 2026, do you worry or do you think about money on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, I mean, I would say, and it's funny because I talk about this with my therapist, because he asks me all the time, well, why are you worried? I said, I don't know why I'm worried, but I guess the reason that I'm worried, like most people my age, how long am I going to live? You have X amount, you have, first of all, I'm still working. And that's a gift. I don't know how much longer. I serve at the whim of, there's no tenure at the drama school. So I and my whatever you call it is up next year. My appointment is up next year. I'm going to have a conversation with the dean. At any given moment, they could say, yeah, thank you, no, thank you. And I would say that right now, that salary that I get at Yale is what pays the bills here. I have health insurance from that, and it basically, I would say, covers all the expenses. And so of my house, and also because I have to stay over in a hotel when I'm at Yale, like all of that stuff. I'm not left with a lot of money left over, but it closes that gap. So then the rest of the money is, and I'm on Social Security, so I have that check, and I have some, whatever you call it. I have a SEP account. I should talk about this for the people who are freelance artists, that everybody should have a SEP account. Do you know what that is? It's like an IRA for your business. And for the longest time, I could not be a member of the Union of USA because they refused to recognize projection design as a category. And I am not one to take something like that lying down, and I would not join the union. They say, oh, you could be an allied craft. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm as good as any lighting designer, any set designer. I am working far more diligently, and I am a contributor, front page, end of conversation. So that went on for, I would say, 15, 20 years that I would not join the union. Is probably why I didn't get a Tony for Tommy the first time around. But I am principled, if nothing else. And I also knew, I have enough sense to know that it's not just me. I represent a lot of people. I was the first projection designer, but I'm not the last. And so whatever I would do would have impact on them. So it was important to me. Eventually, they came around and they made a union designation, which really kind of blew, because every single thing that I had fought for personally, like billing, like royalties, like research, like getting the programmer paid, all of those things literally went backward when the union came, because my fees were up here. And then they put their union minimums, and then people started offering me less money. And it's like, no. But I'm Wendall Harrington, So anyway, that's the union situation. So you can get a pension working for the union. But all those years, I would say the bulk of my career, I could not get that pension because I didn't belong to the union. But I did insist that the producers pay the same money they would have put into my pension and welfare at the union into a SEP account. So the SEP account being my own personal pension fund. So it's like, that was smart. That was, my agent figured that out, that they could do, just ask them. And then they did that. So that's what a SEP account is. So you have a personal IRA. If you work in a place, they're putting some money in an IRA, and you should be putting all your money in an IRA. But a SEP account is, and your accountant will tell you at the end of every year how much money you could put into that SEP account. And basically it's untaxed until you take it out. So, because nobody is going to take care of you when you're old. Take care of you. You got to take care of yourself.
Wendall, I love everything about what you said. Because I'm in the union, but I haven't vested in the pension. So it's a whole thing. So I have always been very careful to contribute for myself. And that's something we say on the show a lot, is like, nobody's taking care of you but you. I had my CPA on once, and they said they don't advise SEP accounts because they think a 401k, an individual 401k, is better. But they cited the reason as you could put more money into it. But I just want to say that in 2026, if you have a SEP IRA, which is a self-employed pension IRA, I forget what the P is for, but you can put 25% of your freelance income, so your 1099 income, you can put up to 25% of that into this tax sheltered account. And that caps out at $70,000 or $72,000 this year. And to me, that's plenty of money to be putting into a retirement account.
if you have it, yeah.
But I do want to say, yeah, exactly. I've never had that problem of coming close to the max of this. But I do want to say that I always say open up an IRA, specifically a Roth IRA, because that you can do in 5 minutes. Anybody can do it. It's almost expected that you breathe, you drink water, and you open an IRA for yourself in the United States. But that caps out, I believe, at 7,000, maybe 7,500. So if you're worried that you might want to put more than 7,000 into a retirement account, that's where, for us freelancers, we open up a SEP IRA, because you then just don't have to worry about maxing out or capping out. Yeah. So,
and I'm in the position that I am taking money out of the SEP account while I'm still putting it in, because I'm over 72. So once you're over 72, you have to be taking money out. So, okay, fine, I'll take it. But then, if my accountant tells me you can put this much in, I keep putting it in, because what's the point of not? It's taxed, yes, the money is being taxed now in the tax bracket that I'm in because I make a certain amount of money working at Yale, blah, 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 blah. But it just makes sense to me, because the money that you put in is taken out of your taxes. So that's also the reason. So if you make $100,000 income and you're able to take 25,000 and put it in the SEP account, you're only taxed. Your income tax is on that 75,000, less all of your, whatever. So for me, it always made sense to do it. So I'm doing it.
Yeah. And I think it also makes sense because the other thing I didn't mention, which is that the SEP IRA is also super easy to open. Like, it's just as easy as an IRA to open. Like, Schwab has it, Fidelity, they all have it. Whereas an individual 401k, not complicated to open, but it's a little more. And then there's quarterly bookkeeping fee, which hopefully isn't that much, but still it bothers me to get $75 charge every 3 months. I don't know why, but that adds up to $300 a year or something like that. So SEP IRA doesn't have that.
Yeah, I hate those damn fees. They just really hurt me. But, so far so good.
Okay, Wendall, do you have any debts, like student loan debts or medical debt or credit card debt?
I have a mortgage that I'm paying off that I think I got about 3 more years, and then I will own this house. I have actually this house that I live in, I have since 1984, and I remortgaged it a number of times based on the fact that the interest rate at that time was going down. So that I remortgaged my house and got money out and rebuilt my patio so that if I needed to, it was ramp ready. So I, was like, okay, I can take this amount of money. I think it was $70,000 out of the, it's same payment, same everything, but they gave me $70,000 for refinancing. And so I just thought I should do this now when I could. It was a number of years ago. And, again, I guess that would indicate that I'm a planner. I have no intentions of being crippled. I have no intentions of not being able to make the steps in front of my house. But I have a property and I have a studio, which is a couple of 100 yards away. And when I built the studio, part of it was, maybe my aged parents might end up needing that. Stupidly, it had stairs. What was I thinking? So it's those are things that you don't think about, when you're young and healthy. And I'm still young and healthy. But I just said, I could redo this, which needed to be done. But while you're thinking about it, you're planning for the future. So yes, I made something that was more attractive. But at the same time, I made something that was also ultimately safer. It's I've looked into elevators. I don't know that I'm going to need an elevator, but my neighbors have an elevator, my agent neighbor, and I thought, that's not ugly. I mean, they did a beautiful job. And I, again, this is do I want to do this? Not particularly. It would kind of wreck the feng shui of my house, but I know where it is. I know sort of how much it costs. I know how it could work. And that is fundamentally the same skill set that I use as a designer, because Projection design, set design is like, okay, you loaded it in. How do you like it? Everything I do is about change. It's like whatever it is that I'm planning, and I tell the students this all the time, you design the show that you think it is. You also design the show the director thinks it is, which is often a different show. What you make is something between those two shows, which is the third show. And so you have to be able to be flexible. So you're thinking your exit strategy before you've gotten into the room, because you have to. You just don't know. And in our world, in the theater, it's everything changes when the human beings enter on stage. You can have the best laid plans, and you could have figured this out to an inch of its life. It all changes when the humans are on the stage. So, and that's the beautiful part of it. But you have to be like alert to that. And you have to be fluid enough and have your insurance policy in a sense of, oh, okay, I've thought about this 4 different ways. So now I have to come up with 2 more ways. But I got 4, and having that, not, oh, this is my idea and I'm sticking to it and don't argue with me. That so rarely works. So having that so I think it's the same way I think about life, that I try to be prepared.
Speaking of all this being prepared, because I thought lighting designers were fairly organized, but now I'm realizing maybe projection designers have a little bit of a leg up there. Have you used a budget for financing, like throughout your life, like stuck to a budget or made one?
Never. And here's the thing. One of the husbands was like the man with an Excel spreadsheet. And I have such admiration for that. I personally, at my advanced stage, cannot add a column of numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. I have to call someone to tell me, what are those things I have to press to get the thing to add up? Don't know. So, I budget for shows, I kind of have a vague idea about things. But no, I do not have the capacity for that. And it's like, numbers are not my friends. It's just the facts. I love a color. I remember every color I can see my brother's childhood yellow, like it's so clear in my head. But I don't know the last number I wrote down. So that's just not, I got to play to my strengths. And that happens not to be one. And one of my strengths is that I can earn money so that I don't budget. I have a sense of, like, I don't balance my checkbook, right? Like, I have a sense that there's enough. So I have never bounced a check, and it's like, so my strength is I earn, and I know vaguely, but I got no skill set. It's also why I have assistants, in the tech who actually can like add columns of numbers.
Come over here, add this up.
And I just looking. That's my job.
No, I think that's like, you hit the nail on the head there in saying that, like, I earn money so that I don't need to budget. Because asking, like, this is almost episode 200. I think this is episode 199, which you can find at, the show notes are at artisticfinance.com/199. But okay, so almost 200 episodes. And the budget question, what I've taken away from it is, if you have enough money, you don't have to worry about the budget. Maybe you want to play in Excel for fun, but like, you don't really need to.
So who plays in Excel for fun? All right.
Not
I know. There are people.
So, but it's that thing of, it also ties into, are you good, bad, or neutral or with money, which is really not a real question. But it's like, well, the people who, society would deem as good with money, it's because they earn money and they have money. And it's not like, yeah.
My younger daughter, she budgets, but she is the daughter of the Mr. Excel spreadsheet, so I feel like there's a genetic component to that. And she's also a librarian. So she's like a systems person. I am not a systems person. I am a dreamer. So I believe different. I believe in my capacity.
Wendall, what is, either the best financial thing you've ever done that other people can learn from, or what's just a good financial thing that you have done that you think other people could maybe emulate?
It's so hard to know what's a good judgment thing. One is to live below your means, I would say, is a very important thing. And I can believe just incredibly how hard it is for kids now. I see my daughter trying to buy a house. It's like streets she was not allowed to walk on. I raised my kids in the East Village. She says, Mom, the apartment is $3 million on a street I was not allowed to walk on. So I don't know what kind of advice to give on that. I would say the best thing that I ever did was when my father died, then there was a small inheritance. And the house next door to me was in foreclosure and I bought it. And I thought, whether or not I'm sure that's ultimately a good investment on some level, but what I didn't do was to take that money and fritter it away. I did a little frittering just because that was nice. But in the end, I used pretty much everything to buy and restore this house, which now somebody is, I'm renting it to a former student, and I have long-term plans for an artist residency here. But I think the idea, like if you get a windfall, tuck it, because they don't come that often. And yeah, there will be some pleasure in having a few things that you didn't otherwise have. But if that all disappears, you will weep. So I have a house, could I lose money on that house? I don't see it. I could always sell it and get that money back. It's ultimately it goes to my kids for them to decide what they want to do about it. But it also felt to me like it was real estate money, came from the sale of the house. And I happen to know that money came from my grandparents, who helped my parents buy the house so it's like, oh, that's real estate money. That real estate money belongs in real estate. Like you don't buy stocks with that. You don't go, that just made sense to me. And I feel like my grandmother, who did own a lot of real estate, she would have been happy about that, but that was just what she believed in. She, was like, nobody in my family ever believed in the stock market. I'm not sure I believe in it now. Ultimately, I used to date a trader and he was always mocking me for the low fees that I would accept. And I said, I know you have a lot of money, but you've never made anything. You make money because somebody else lost it. There is no making in what you do. Yes, I will work for 6 weeks for $5,000, but look, I made something and I feel good about that. It's the same thing like making dinner. You eat it and it's gone, but you made it. So for me, the stock market is dicey.
I agree, because right before we logged on for this chat, the first headline was traders are selling off because of a Trump tariff thing, which is fine that that's news, I guess. But it's also like, it just shows that it's a made up thing that does not tie to like reality.
But nothing. And well, Pam Bondi saying, well, the Dow was over. Well, like, and could we look at how many people actually own stocks in this country? Come on. That's not us. That's not, I own some stocks because, if you have retirement funds, they're invested. But it's not like, oh my God, I'm getting up every day looking at the Hang Seng, and trying to, and it's a very worrisome time because he is an out of control lunatic and we're all going to be hurt. And this really has me worried about.
Yeah, and people are hurt. People are hurt and people are dead because of a lunatic.
People are hurt. But it's like my kids looking at a $3 million house. God forbid they buy it. I don't know what to tell them to do because I feel like I wouldn't be so surprised we get a depression. That $3 million house will be worth $1 million, but they'll still have the note. So, it's.
Yeah. Random side tangent. Earlier, you said your parents had childhood depression, and I just feel like in 2026, that sounds like they were depressed all their childhood.
Oh no, they grew up in the depression. No, they were not. No, they were not depressed. They were carriers, but no. Growing up in the depression is to grow up in America in the 1930s, and so that made people of that generation incredibly frugal. I would say my mother's parents suffered more than my father's parents, and so he seemed to be able to have some profligacy and abandon when it came to money, and my mother never did. But I know that my mother came home from school every day and did piecework in order to keep the family together. They fit springs into ballpoint pens. Think about that. So, every day after school, you got homework, but then you're going to sit for a couple of hours doing these pieces at whatever pennies a piece to, help bring food. So I think that that's a lesson that most people of my generation have not had. We've had, I was in New York in the, bad 70s when everything was dirty and cheap. I should have bought a house then, but, in any event, so that's what it is. No, they were not depressed.
Yeah. Cool. All right. The flip side of a really good financial thing that you've done. What about a bad financial thing you've done or a mistake you've made that you would caution other people? Don't do this. Don't get into this situation. And don't say your husbands. Don't say supporting your husbands.
Look, getting married is very expensive. If you are the breadwinner, that is very expensive. But I would say, I'm trying to think about that. I'm not profligate. If I think about the things that I did that cost me money, it's like saying no to Cameron McIntosh, like disagreeing with Cameron McIntosh. That, has ramifications for the rest of your life. But because I haven't done anything really sort of big and stupid about money, I'm just trying to think. I built this studio. It cost me a fortune. Nobody in it right now. I had this plan that everybody was going to reverse commute up here instead of me going into the city all the time. And by the time I finished the studio, I closed the studio. I stopped working. In 99, I couldn't do it anymore. So I just quit. So whether that is ultimately a financial mistake or not, the jury's out. Did I spend a lot of money? Yeah. Am I broke? No. So, and I tend to be pretty sane, about money and stuff like that. I help a lot of people financially. One could say that when people don't pay you back, that's a mistake. I don't care. It's not that I don't care. I wish people would pay back money they borrow or that I give them or whatever, but I can't. I always think that just, it's like it always somehow comes back, and I'm not really where I see a lot of people who need things, and if I can, I don't have millions, but I have the capacity to help somebody out. If I can, I will. I feel so extraordinarily fortunate in my life, and my therapist keeps telling me, stop saying you were lucky. And the thing is, but I was lucky, and I was in the right place at the right time. But there was nobody else doing this. And so there I was, and I did it. You couldn't make that happen. You had to be there for that to happen. Now, I wasn't an idiot. I worked really hard. I gave an enormous amount of time and energy to people who never paid me a dime. I built a studio in Manhattan for producers to come in and see what projection was. Can you imagine? They didn't pay for that. I paid for that. And I kept that damn studio open for years, which was really hard. So if I had all that money, yes, I would not have to be teaching, but I love teaching. So I don't know that that's a mistake. But that time will tell. My kids could, when I'm gone, say, that bitch, if she hadn't taken care of those people, we'd be like driving better cars. But
having never met your children, I do not think they will say this.
They'll be struck by lightning. I can't imagine them either.
That's amazing. All right. Well, maybe this answer is different now. Well, I'm sure it is now in your career, or maybe it's not. But how do you get work? Like, how do you find jobs? Like you said, you're going to ABT. Who hires you for that?
Oh, ABT is reviving some old ballets that I did for them a long time ago. And I don't know how I get work. I don't. It's pretty much the first of all, I stopped working on Broadway because I found it hateful. And I only came, that was in 1999 after Civil Wars, which is the worst experience of my life. And I felt like I can't give anymore to this, for so little. Money doesn't matter to me as much as satisfaction. And so I stopped, and then I only went back for people that I cared about. And that also became fraught. So I decided, no, I can't do Broadway anymore because what's left there is money. Like, that's where the money is. But that's just, it's not enough motivation for me. And family is motivation for me, or people I love. So I have been working with this choreographer, Alexei Ratmansky, for many years. So I don't know. I started working with ABT. Oh yeah, we were reviving Othello, which I want to say 1997, 1994. I'm trying to read the picture of the binder edge, but first ballet I ever did. And since then, at ABT, I did a lot for ABT. And I did a lot for almost nothing because they didn't know anything. And I'm like just an inveterate teacher. And I used to come into ABT as, oh, I see, you have a problem. Okay, I will fix this problem. Yeah, I know you have no budget. Okay, I'll fix this problem. So I have that relationship. And I'm doing another ballet for Stanton Welsh in Houston because so many years ago, I was out there. They were talking to me about doing Sylvia, a ballet. And as we were walking around the shop, there was the model for the Nutcracker they were about to do. And I walked by and I said, oh, nice model. What are you doing about the tree? And everybody went, oh, right. And so, I get a phone call 3 days later saying, will you help us figure out this tree? And so it's like, I don't know. That's how I get work. But it's not like I'm getting tons of work. And I'm also, I like ballet. I like music. And that's mostly what I'm doing now. So I'm happy about that. But I'm also happy that my students are getting the work that in a way I would have been getting. And so if you spend 20 years educating your competition, you can't actually expect to get more work. Because I'm doing a very good job and they're really talented. So I can't be mad at that.
Oh, proud teacher. I love that. Do you, with assistants or fellow designers, like on a show, do you ever talk about pay or negotiate pay with them?
It's so rare that anybody is honest about that. So when I first started out, the difficulty for people to figure out what to pay me was I said I want parity with the lighting designer. And that was how I started. Because it seemed to me that although I knew that my labor was greater, it was a number that they understood. And so later when I said, oh no, I need parity with the set designer, they shit themselves. But in many cases, now I'm doing this ballet for Houston, and I am the set designer. There'll be a few moving parts, but, basically it will be projection, though I will be designing the space and stuff like that. So, but hardly anybody ever is honest about that. When I had my studio in New York before I closed it in 99, my associates had salaries. I paid their health insurance. It was ridiculous. Nobody does that. And then they got extra when they were in tech. If they had to be in tech, I paid them more, which was part of the reason why I closed my studio, because I couldn't keep it. I had to do things I didn't want to do. Like Civil War was so hateful that that was, and I realized I'm working so other people have health insurance, and I couldn't do that anymore. It's one thing to do it if you're doing things that you love. But when you start to do things where you feel really disgusted by the product, then I didn't sign on to that show feeling disgusted. I went through several directors to ultimately get to that disgust. So just as I try not to do things in bad faith, but that just burned me. And I realized that I had so many dependents beyond my own children that I had to just cut the cord, as it were. And I did.
I mean, I don't have a studio. I never intend to have a studio. I'm just like a freewheeling lighting designer roaming around the world. But I do see people like Ken Billington or Beowulf Boritt who employ associates and stuff like that. And it just seems like a beast that you have to continue to feed. And I get palpitations just even thinking about it.
There was a year we did 22 shows. 1 year. So you can't do that unless you have a lot of people who you can send out to do all the things. And the reason we did 22 shows is nobody else. So, out of my studio came people like Sage Carter and Elaine McCarthy and Michael Clark, but all those people had to be trained, so it's like a full year before they were useful. So, that if you want to say that was a bad investment, since Elaine is not sending me part of her royalties from Wicked, I would say, yes, that's a very bad investment. But what do I care? I mean, you have to, literally, you cast your bread upon the waters, and you have to believe in the life that you're making. I'm incapable of a kind of calculation of quid pro quo, and I just always say yes. And I always want to help. And is that I would say 98% great. Is there 2% bullshit? Absolutely. Are the people who you give money to and they disappear from your life? Absolutely. Ultimately, I if I have to stand there and be judged, I'll take my chances.
Also, last show with Zach, I mentioned that I was trying to get a student a design. Like there was a design I couldn't do, and I tried to hand it off to the student. And I can now report that I successfully handed it off, and they're doing that design. And I am so proud. Like I'm so happy about it. And it's that same conundrum with you of like, yeah, I guess they're my competition and they're taking the job I could have had, but I don't know. I'm super happy about it.
You know this Yiddish phrase, "Shep naches." I'm not Jewish, but I know what I would call theatrical Yiddish. To shep naches is like to stand in the back of the house and watch your student do really good. Like they're doing a good job, or you feel like that's a kind of pride that's like bar mitzvah pride. And the parents stand by shep naches. So I always love that phrase.
Awesome, amazing. All right, what job of yours has been the most well compensated?
Oh. Well, let's see. Working at Esquire, that was well compensated, and that's outside the realm of working in the theater. And the joke is that I have been working for them for a long time, making work for them, and then they came and asked me if I wanted to design the magazine, which is ridiculous because I didn't have any experience. But they said, "We love everything that you're doing. You seem to understand the magazine so well." 6 months before it was made. And then it was made, and then they were less happy with it. So they wanted me to make a cinematic magazine. And I had one kid. I was, life was, I was alone with that kid. And the people that I worked with were very aware of my situation when they asked me to do this. And I just thought it was ridiculous. And they offered me more money than I'd ever heard of in my life. And I said, "What?" They offered me more money. And they said, because they thought when I said, "What?" that I was like objecting to this huge amount of money. And they offered me more money and said, "Oh, but that's our final offer." And I'm like, okay. So I was able to retire the debt that was made by the piece of shit who walked out on my 6-month-old baby. And then they let me go home to my kid. And, so that was great. I had an expense account, I had health insurance. I had all of those things. So that was the best paying job. As probably, I don't know, maybe Civil Wars paid well. I can't remember. And Tommy, of course, produced a lot of royalties. So because there were so many companies of it. And, and I would say the last Broadway show I would have been well compensated for if I had in fact been paid. But I was not paid because Garth Drabinsky, may his name be a curse, who begged me, dogged me, was relentless about making me do this show, would not stop calling me, made me do the show, and stiffed me for $30,000. So Garth, wherever you are, I wish you ill.
We don't have time to go into that. But if anybody doesn't know that name, just do a quick Google search.
And I know better. That's the worst. It fucked me on ragtime. So why was I bending over again? But whatever.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Because I've been not paid for things, but never, not $30,000. I'm trying to think. The most I was ever not paid was maybe like $2,500 or something. And then it's that thing where you're there, or what you were mentioning, like, we get paid such a little amount, like the stockbroker being like, why do you work for so little?
Right.
It's like, for me, when I don't get paid, it's like, to go fight for so little is sort of a ludicrous concept. So I just have to.
Well, it's kind of why they do it, I think. And also, look, the fact is, the reason we get paid so little is we love what we do. And they're completely taking advantage of that. You work for these regional theaters, they've got like 40 people working in the office that have got health insurance and weekly paychecks who do a tenth of the work that we do. And we're exploited. And the reason we're exploited is we need to do this. And they know that. So the secretary or the, publicity agent does not need to do that. They don't wake up in the morning with the need to be creative. We're like, I'm hungry. If I'm, it's like a few weeks pass, I'm not making something. My partner now is like always laughing at me because I always say, I'm just a washed up husband. He says, you're the busiest person I know, but it's like, well, I don't have like these many, I'm like exist pretty much without an assistant now. So I must be doing nothing, right? That's that, but that's the mindset that is so readily exploited. You want to come here and do this for like nothing? No. Yes. Do something? Yes. So that's the dynamic of that.
Throughout Altus, because you had a studio, do you have an entity, a corporation, an LLC, anything like that?
I don't have an LLC, but I have a DBA called Mom's Idea Hut. And Zach may have talked about this because I think I taught him this. And that is, for projection designers, we don't have shops. A set designer draws a plan, sends it out, shops bid on it, and then somebody else gets paid to build it. And in my experience, especially in the early days when we were working in film, nobody knew how to do what we were doing. Nobody still knows how to do what we were doing. And so I had assistants and people in the studio to do that, but you couldn't. How do you get the production to pay for that? So you could not do that on your own name. And so you had to have this extra entity that was your shop that billed for things. So for a while there was Erickson Design, Mom's Idea Hut, whatever. And then so here you're going to pay me this fee, but then you're going to pay Mom's Idea Hut for the production of which, the research, the programming, whatever that is. So it's not an LLC. My accountant, for some reason, advised me against that. I've been in partnerships when I was Luminous Productions back in the 80s. For some reason, that seemed to be a good idea. That long since dissolved. But that's my experience. But I think that what my accountant told me was about making a corporation was that you had to make a lot of money to make the tax burden of that worth it. And I am no longer in that situation. I make more money from my Yale salary pretty much than the rest of everything else that I do.
Gotcha. With the Yale salary now, how much do you make W-2 versus 1099, like percentage wise in like any given year? Because I assume it used to be more 1099.
Absolutely. It used to be totally 1099. And it's just since I'm working at Yale that I have W-2. So right now I would say it's like 70% the W-2 and and there's like royalties that come in from nutcrackers and stuff like that. But, that's insignificant amounts of money.
Do you, maybe not now, but when you were getting more 1099, do you pay quarterly taxes?
Yes. Yes, you have to pay quarterly taxes because they will fine you if you don't. So, and, again, it's good to have an accountant who can give you a sense of that. And, over time, I've come to understand, depending on how things are going, about how much he has an idea about how much quarterly tax I should pay. And he'll tell me that, like, based on this year in April, right? Last year in April, I had money coming back, which was substantial because I had paid significantly into the quarterly taxes, which I didn't know. So they kept that. And then I made one more payment as opposed to making 4 more payments because of how I felt the year was going. There were no giant fees of any kind coming in.
The accountant, have you always had an accountant?
I have. Since I opened the studio, and that would have been in the 90s, late 90s probably. And it's the same guy, Henry Fong, who's great. Who I don't know that I have ever physically met Henry Fong.
That's awesome.
And I didn't meet my agent for years, Helen Merrill. We were on the phone for years before we actually met.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because also, that's like, in my brain, if it was like the internet wasn't around as much, like in the 90s, to me, you have to meet in person. But so it's interesting to say you never met this person.
No, somebody else would drag the papers over to him or whatever. And, that was that. We'll do it on the phone. So
amazing. Your retirement plan that you're sort of like quasi in because you're collecting Social Security, what is your retirement picture looking like? Like, what are all the
God
pieces?
knows. So I have the SEP account and they're sending me money from that. Because I teach, there's a TIAA CREF account, which I don't really understand, how that's working. And so when I was dating the trader, he took whatever money I had and invested it in stocks. And I think that was around maybe $300,000 at that time. That's a long time ago. And then I just, not knowing anything, I just let it sit there. I have no, just like the papers come, I put them in the back of the drawer. I don't even look because for me, it's like, it's meaningless until you need it. So I remember him once, like years after we broke up, calling me and says, "Why aren't you grateful?" I said, "Grateful for what?" And he says, "Look at your stock account." I said, "David, it goes back in the drawer. And like when I sell it, I'll call you and say thank you. Because when I sell it, it could be nothing. So I don't, for me, it's like, it's a show of some kind." And I finally realized that I should get a financial planner. And because I didn't know anything about all of this stuff that I had. And I have gotten since then a woman who's like, when I gave her all the stocks, she says, "Oh, there's a fascinating picture of exactly the stocks I would have bought in 1995. So it's like, oh. So I have a feeling she's done other things since then, but still, the papers arrive, they go in the back of the drawer. I think that she's doing a good job. I don't know. I have we're supposed to have a meeting so I could understand what the TIAA CREF thing is. Like, how does that work? My goal is to work until I can't work anymore. Like, I'm not, like, the idea of retiring in some way makes not any, because I love what I do. I love teaching. Schlepping back and forth to New Haven, I love a lot less, but I love the teaching part. And I know what I bring to them, and it has very little to do with projection. I have an extraordinary passion and care about them as human beings, and also about performance and art in the big picture way. I'm a lot less interested in the little Narshkite details. But I think that I do an extraordinary job that I know nobody else is doing, is like bringing them. I've got the art school involved. I got the music school. I'm like a connector. So I would hope that I can continue to do that. I just want library privileges.
I feel like you get those emeritus. I'm not worried about that.
Who knows?
The union, because I know Peter Kaczorowski I've worked for, and he went into retirement.
I love the Prince of Darkness.
He, and maybe, what's that guy's name? Oh my God. John Lee Beatty.
They retired.
They both like John Lee Beatty, I think, is more like you in that he's still like working. Peter is like fully retired. And I know that with the pension at the union, it's like if you retire, you get it. But if you keep on working, then you don't have access to it. So how is that working for you?
So I literally just like a couple of months ago, I realized, I'm not working anymore really for the union. So I should retire. And I'm not a big fan because I feel like they personally fucked me. So I thought, why should I be paying these dues all the time? I'm not getting union work. And then, so I retired. They actually had already started paying my pension because I hit an age at which you have to collect your pension. And then now ABT, said, we're going to send you a union contract. So I just had to call Carl Mueller and say that I was going to be, I have to unretire, but I'm working a week. So I don't know what they're paying me virtually nothing to remount these ballets because it's ABT and they never paid me anything. So why would they pay me now? So I don't know how that's going to go, but I get some very stupid small amount of money from my union pension because my primary working years, I could not be in the union. So I don't have that. It kills me because I believe in unions. I believe in unions a very great deal, but I don't believe in this union who let that piece of shit open that show on Broadway, knowing full well he owed money all over town. So you have one job. You should have closed that show, or you should have put a gun to his head until everybody got paid, but you didn't do it. So what are you for? So you took a lot of money from a lot of people. And I hope that Carl Mueller lives very well.
All right. Again, we don't have time to go into it. Google the name if you want more on that. Okay, so lightning is going to strike me down. I can't believe I'm saying this in public. I'm just throwing this out there that with ABT, you probably could have said to them, could you just not do a union contract? I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, but if it was more work.
I could, but I don't care. I try to be fair. I'm trying to be fair. That's all.
Yeah. I also actually want to circle back to something you said a long time ago, which is before you were in the union, you would have the producer pay into your SEP IRA, whatever amount that they would have paid had they been in the union. So like right now, union contracts, I think 22% goes to pension and welfare. So I'm saying this for all the non-union people who might be listening, that is something you can ask for that is very reasonable. Because especially if there's another union person working on the show, the producers or the people paying already have to pay by like law and edict that extra amount. So the fact that they're getting you for, let's say it's the exact same design fee, you are cheaper to them than the other design fee. So you can feel free to ask for 22% or 10, it might be 12% is the pension part of it.
Get a copy of a union contract and see exactly what that is and go get it, because that is not, you should not be punished for not being in the union.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Okay. I think I've asked most of the financial questions I wanted to ask, so we can head to a wrap up here, but I have a very slow wrap up. So something that has nothing to do with finance or business, slide projectors. In my brain, I know I should look this up on my own, right? I'm 37 for context. When somebody says slide projector to me, I imagine one with like the circular carousel that's coming around. Is that what a slide projector is?
You bet, babe. Tommy had 54 slide projectors on the back wall.
Ridiculous.
54. Do you know how ridiculous that was?
Does that mean 54 people were operating them?
How were they run by computers, darling? It wasn't.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
But it was the 90s. But the way that it worked at that time, the computer that would handle the projectors could not handle that many projectors. So we had the computer, and the word you can no longer use, a slave. So we had the computer that would handle, 40 of them. And then there was it gave cues to another computer which handled the rest of them because it had a capacity. Yes, I use slide projectors. I use xenographics, it's the same Kodak body with a giant lamp behind it. Those were they're playing our song, 1978. And then I use Pani projectors and Pani scrollers, and nobody knows what they are. Here, because I'm doing Othello, which use them. Look, slides. You see this? Pani slides, 6 inches square, and then there were scrolls. I don't have any scrolls in front of me. I took them to school. 100 feet long, holes punched, like a film strip, so you could scroll. I did the Knicks in player introductions for a number of years on the floor of Madison Square Garden with Pani scrollers. Insane, because you had 2 of them, so and you had to do the player introductions. You know how many permutations you can have of a lineup? You don't get the lineup until 10 minutes before the show. You have to that was a math problem. Only Sage Carter, my assistant, could figure that out. She's a genius. But, that's what you're doing. Now video, everything is so easy. That's why I say it's only women did this until it became computers. The men can do this, not hard.
So you just held up like plastic slides. I'm calling it plastic.
They're not plastic. These are made on acetate, but the color film was used Cibachrome, a very high heat. It's the stuff that you see in bus shelters. When you see color transparency in a bus shelter. We had to teach all these people how to do this. K&L were the only lab in New York who would do it. So you would add a different color chemical process to make it transparent instead of translucent. Like the bus shelter is translucent. What I need is transparent. It's a different chemistry. Wipe the back off. So, yeah.
Cool, because my question was then going to be like, how bright could these be, right? I'm thinking not crazy bright.
Very bright. They could be very bright. You have to change them if they're sitting for a long time, then they would burn. But the Cibachrome film is high heat. So you could get away. You couldn't, hours, no. But, if they're moving. But that was why, you could make a lot of money replacing slides because they would burn. That was one of the ways that I made money on Tommy, was that after 6 months or so, you'd have to replace all the slides. That was $75,000 to do that. That was a ton of money just kept the studio going, rebuilding everything. So, but that's why that's not coming back, because nobody wants to pay for that. Even though it's so beautiful, the color is so beautiful. Never.
Amazing. All right. And then you had mentioned that first gig with Tharon Musser. And I think I maybe just misheard it, but did you do that and not see the show that it was going into?
Well, they did. Okay, so here's the thing. It was for a show called Ballroom, and it was a test. She was trying to invent the color wheel. And so they were someplace, I want to say in Connecticut, that they hung these projectors from the grid pointing down. Because what the slides I made had 5 circles of pure color that I reproduced the gel color exactly, which was what could not previously be done. And what she wanted to do was to mix color. And she was trying to figure out how to do that. So the way for her to test that was for me to make all of these perfectly clear images of color, and she could point the projectors all in the same place and try this, that, and the other thing. And that was all that was a test. And so it worked, and she had the color wheel built.
Wow.
So it wasn't even, I mean, they didn't pay me hardly anything. It didn't matter.
Sure.
But I got there playing a song from that, and it changed my life. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a nerd, so of course there's like a book on Tharon Musser that I've read and all that. And anyway, it's like if I could go back in time and meet one person, it might be Tharon Musser,
what a fucking goddess she was. And she was so, first of all, I learned so much from her just in terms of how she operated. She took no shit from nobody, but she knew the book, she knew the staging, she knew the set, and she always knew, and I took that as such a model to be incredibly well informed. And everybody respected Tharon. The stagehands would have killed for her. There wasn't anything Tharon couldn't ask for because she treated them right. She always had respect for everybody. But she knew shit, and she would say, "That's fucked up." Everybody said, "Oh, yes." And, my first experience they're playing her song every night after tech, go down to the bar. There's Tharon. It's a whole bunch of guys, and, a couple of drinks. Everybody's telling war stories. And at some point, usually was Tharon. Sometimes Doug would say, that thing that's happening in the second act where that happens. And then that's like, not that. No, that blows. What are we going to do about that? And that was this is the reason that I'm in theater. I loved that everybody would say, "Oh, the winch could do this." Doug would say this could be slower. Maybe the costume could be more complicated. All of these things all together, and you're fixing 6 seconds. That to describe it now makes me weep because I find that so incredibly beautiful. All of these people coming together to make something that is completely invisible and nobody is taking credit. And there is no place else where that can happen. That idea of building something together. I mean, it moves me to this day to think about that. The just complete jettisoning of ego. It was nobody's idea. It was everybody's idea, and that's what I'm still trying to build at Yale. I was at a meeting the other day and they were like so thankful for what I said. And it's like, I don't understand why everybody doesn't just see it like this. It's the playwrights, darling. It's all about the words. And it was like I said, the moon is made of green cheese. And it's like,
Yeah.
No words, no show.
Man, I
We're
love
here
this
for the
because
word.
I think my students think I'm crazy, but like I call it a pet peeve, but it's like if somebody in a design meeting, and anyway, if it's like a director, or designer, somebody comes up with an idea and any of my lighting students say no or say they don't want to do it or anything, I get so upset because I am like, that is not how this works. Like you're going to have an idea that you're going to need help with. They have an idea they need help with. So like, yeah, get the ego. Like what is ego doing here? Like we're
It's
all trying
also
to make
that
this story.
sometimes the most absurd idea has a grain in it. And you have to believe in that. It's like if somebody tells you that they notice something in the wallpaper, there's something wrong with the writing. Because you should not be looking at the wall. But that's a clue. And if you are an actual theater artist, you will know that. Instead of saying, that's ridiculous. That is a real thing. It's like if I lost interest in what was going on, why did that happen? It's certainly not the design. I remember Doug Schmidt telling me I got fired from a show because the sofa fabric wasn't funny. The actress couldn't remember her lines. So you got to remember what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it. We're trying to change the way people think. That's our job. So it's like sometimes it takes a lot of oars to do that. Hopefully we're all going together, but remember the goal. And that's, that's the hard thing to. And I do think that there's a difference in the way people operate now. They're far more, it's a very strange business of being a lot more egotistical. Also, what I would call the snowflake syndrome, like where people can't take criticism. I don't like criticism, but if you're not getting it, honey, you're not growing. So, and even I remember Richard Eyre once, he did The Crucible, and he was at a talk back. There's 35 producers' names, 35 above the title, 35. And somebody asked him, do you have to take notes from all these people? And, and he sat there and he laughed and he said, well, the first thing you have to remember is they don't want to make it worse. And I thought, well, that is why he is a peer of the realm and I'm an angry bitch from Queens. Because my response would be, oh, yeah? And he was, you got to hear what they're saying. And if they're saying, I'm interested in the wallpaper, that's a clue. Or if I don't like those shoes, that's a clue. So yes, they may not be able to say exactly what they may not have the knowledge or the expertise, but you gotta, if that's your goal is to make it better, you have to hear it, and not do what I would do is say, yeah, go. I don't have to listen to you. You're not on my team, which would be kind of my response. He schooled me in that moment. And it has made me a better artist for that. And understanding that people expressing discomfort about something has some meaning. So, yeah.
Wendall, that is a beautiful note to end on. I have one more finance question, but I don't even want to do it because that was just great. But logistical question, where can people connect with you and or who do you want to connect with you?
Anybody can connect with me. And I am IdeaHut, IDEAHUT at mac.com. Is probably the easiest way to find me, or Wendall.Harrington at Yale.edu. Always interested to help people. And, I did those Broadway master classes in the 80s, and I always gave out my email address, and people would say, you're crazy. And, the thing is, I've had people, like I had some guy not long ago from Uruguay saying, I attended one of your, lectures, and I have a question. You said we could ask anytime. Absolutely. You got a question. I may not know the answer, but I know who knows. If I don't know, I know who knows. And I have spent a lifetime making the world safe for projection design. That is the goal. And I want it to be beautiful and I want it to be meaningful. So if I can help anybody, I'm here for it. So happy to do this.
I love it, Wendall. And just to connect us through time and space, because you mentioned Elaine McCarthy, and I am doing my first real projection show now. But the associate I have working with me, his name is Max, but he's worked for Elaine for a long time. So it's just like there's this chain that though we've never met, we are connected through time and space. And
you're there at Webster, where I love that pool. Have you swam in that pool? It's not 25 meters, but it was nice. I mean, I'm a swimmer, so, I like a 25-meter pool so I can count. But still, it was very nice that they offered it to me while I was at Opera Theater of St. Louis, because girl needs a pool.
Okay, I'm going to try to convince them to remount something, and then you can come out and use the pool again.
Would be great. I guess Jim Robinson got mad at me, and then so I was cut off and never asked back, because that's the way that works sometimes.
Amazing. All right, Wendall, I have had a blast. I love this.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to send you a person I think you should talk to.
Perfect. That's
for your podcast. So I will get that email out. Once I think I got more snow to shovel.
Amazing. All right. Thank you.
All right. Nice to talk to you.
That's it for this week's episode. My takeaways are building credit, taking out a $1,000 loan in their 20s to establish credit, and letting people know that they can pay the money back. All right. So I have always viewed credit as this way over prioritized thing, and people stress out about making sure you have a good credit score. And that's always annoyed me. But hearing it broken down into a basic, it lets people know that you can pay money back, that makes total sense. So I'm going to try to have a better attitude about it from now on. It's a good thing, I guess. SEP IRAs. Yes, these things are great for people that have 1099 income. So if you have maxed out your IRA and you want to save even more for retirement, as a freelancer, you can do that and you can easily open up a SEP IRA. So in 2026, the IRA limits are $7,500. So that's whether that's a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, but you can put $7,500 aside. A SEP IRA in 2026 is limited to 25% of your 1099 income or $72,000, whichever number is less. So if you make $100,000 in 1099 income, you can put $25,000 of that away. If you make $288,000 in freelance income, you can max that out at $72,000. Now note, this is in addition to the IRA limit of $7,500. So for me, I try to put $10,000 aside for retirement every year. So that would be $7,500 in an IRA, and then was that $2,500 in a SEP IRA in addition to. I could also just put the $10,000 in the SEP IRA if I wanted and not do the traditional IRA. I just have a default in myself of I start with the IRA and then I go to the SEP. I'll also say that the most I've ever set aside for retirement was $17,000 in 1 year. So I have never even come close to needing to max out the SEP IRA. But I'm saying this all to say that if you're not part of a union with a pension plan, or you don't have a 401k or something like that, that the SEP and the traditional IRA combo gives you plenty of opportunity to save for retirement. Producers putting money into a SEP account because Wendall wasn't in the union. Now, Wendall has a lot of street cred to be asking for things, but this is an absolutely appropriate request that I want everybody who's listening who isn't using union contracts or who is an individual freelancer to remember that. So say yes to the fee that they offer you, and then say, can you put 12% of that into a retirement account? And not 12% of your fee, but like 12% in addition to the fee. And I just think that's brilliant. And I'm saying 12% because I believe that's the USA 829 portion going into the pension fund right now. The union also will take 10% into a healthcare fund. And so combined, that's 22% of whatever your fee is going into these extra funds. So it would also be appropriate for you to ask for up to 22%. I just don't know that there's a way for them to contribute to a health account, an individual health fund. But if you're feeling up to it, you absolutely could ask for 22% of your fee into your retirement funds and health funds, etc., and figure out the logistics of how those go in, afterwards. All right. Building a third show that's a combo of the director and you. This is not anything to do with business or career, but artistically, this is exactly what any entertainment show is doing. Whether you are a director, a designer, a performer, or a crew person, you aren't doing your version of the show. You are doing the third version of whatever the story is. And that's combining your track with everybody else's track. And that's creating this ethereal third show. So I love this explanation because it just explains a little bit about that spiritual feeling we get from theater. Because I'm always trying to figure out what is that thing that's so transcendent about theater. And I think this plays a part of it. Because nobody owns the experience, right? It's never exactly what the playwright intended. It's never what the director intended. And the designers and the performers, they're also not seeing something that they imagined in their head. And yet, it's exactly what we were all trying to achieve, right? And then in addition to that, it doesn't really become the art until you add the audience, right? When they start sharing the space, then it really gets to what it is intended to be. And also, this podcast doesn't actually become a podcast until you listen. So chatting with Wendall was an amazing experience, but it was just Wendall, it was just me, but now it's a podcast. So anyway, all these things that connect people through time and space are always something that I really enjoy thinking about because it's like, why are we alive? Why are we on this planet? And somehow I think there's part of that in this. All right. Thank you for indulging me for those thoughts. And also, while we're at it, thank you for listening and being here to share this time and this space with me and with Wendall. And then, of course, Wendall, also thank you for sitting down and sharing all that. All right. So now let's look ahead to next episode. I actually have some homework for you. Should you choose to accept it, and that is to go back and listen to episode 100, because next episode is 200, and we are bringing back lighting designer Carl Faber. He's going to give us an update on his life as a freelancer based in Portland. Now, his career in the, let's say, 3 years it's taken us to get 100 episodes in, his career has taken some twists and turns, and yet it is still that blessing of theatrical freelancing that we all are used to. And yet he's kept the business side of things very organized along the way. If you go back and listen, you will remember how incredibly organized he is with his life. All right, I can't wait for you to hear it. I'm looking forward to that episode. That is all I have for today. Until next time, break a leg.
Thank you for listening to Artistic Finance, where we interview successful artists, leaders, and investors to help educate and inspire the creative community. To access our show notes and resources, go to artisticfinance.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decision, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Artistic Finance. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.